Hello D&D people of the internet, it's me, Max from Maximus Miniature, back with another video, and today we are discussing race. Now, before I want to get into the content of this video, I do want to apologize. There was no upload last week because I was on a camping trip. In the future, I will be attempting to make videos ahead of time so I can upload them whenever I do happen to be gone and unable to make a video. So yeah, with that out of the way, let's get into race in D&D. Today's video will be discussing the 9 basic races. In other words, the races that appear in the player's handbook and the basic rules. Races in D&D can be divided into 4 different categories. Common races, the races that almost everyone knows about, and if you play there's almost no repercussions because everyone knows what you are. Uncommon races, which are like common races but less people are going to know what you are, though they're still pretty well known. Rare races, which are going to make most peasants go, "What are you?" or they're just going to assume you're a cursed human. And monstrous races. Races that no one in their right mind would ever allow into an established civilization. Things like orcs and kobolds and all manner of other raiding creatures. So, let's get right into it. In the player's handbook, they introduce us to 9 races. These 9 races make up most of the world. Now, in the player's handbook, there's only common and uncommon races. And yeah, there's 4 common races, 5 uncommon races, and let's start with the common ones. So, let's kick things off with the common races. There's 4 common races, and those 4 races are going to be the race that are common. Everyone's going to pretty much know what they are. And those races are the dwarves, the elves, the halflings, and the humans. So, quick explanation, I guess. I'm not going to be going fully in depth into their stats. I'm going to be quickly grazing over what their basic abilities are. What are you doing, cat? I'm going to be quickly going over what their basic abilities are. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to retake this. Well, I guess the cat's in here now because he won't stop bothering me. So, I'm going to be going over their basic abilities, a little bit into their lore, and then I'll also be going into, just the different sub-races, what makes different forms of them different. Oh, and this is Major Tom. He's my cat, and yeah, he's making a cameo in this video because he is being annoying. Yes, you okay? So, let's start things off with the dwarf. The dwarf is a hardy, hard-to-kill, and poison race of short people. And they got very beautiful beards, and they like rocks and making things. And so, how do I explain them? Yeah, that's actually about it. They're just a bunch of short people who like making things and like rocks. So, their sub-races are the mountain dwarf, the hill dwarf, and the duergar, or the grey dwarf. The mountain dwarf, as you might guess, is dwarves that live in mountains. They're strong, and they get armor proficiencies. And then there's the hill dwarf. Hill dwarfs, as you may also guess, live in the hills rather than the mountains, and they get extra HP each level. And they're also like street smart. Rather than intelligent, knowing things, they know how to apply knowledge. I'm pretty sure I stole that from someone else. So, if you couldn't already guess, both of those are regularly used as wizards because extra HP or the ability to take armor while being able to cast spells. Yeah, you go. Having armor and the ability to cast spells, and then also extra HP adds for amazing combinations with wizard, because wizard is a squishy meat sack that can't wear armor. So, after that, you got the duergar, or the grey dwarf. Grey dwarves are a race of dark, spooky dwarves that live in the Underdark, a series of caverns under the main world of D&D. They have psionic powers, so psionics is a fancy word for psychic abilities, so they can make themselves grow bigger, and they can also turn invisible, which is really powerful. They also have improved dark vision, meaning they can see 200 feet rather than 60 feet in the dark. The downside of them is they have sunlight sensitivity, which is the worst ability in the game. I'll explain all the mechanics of these things in a later video. But that's the dwarf. That's it. Moving on, we got the elf. The elf is a race of long-lived humans with pointy little ears. They're not Christmas elves, they're Legolas elves. Christmas elves are much more like gnomes, which I'll explain in a couple minutes. So, elves are, they're long-lived humans. They're hard to charm, and one of their other main abilities is the fact that they only have to... When they sleep, they enter what's called trance. Rather than falling asleep, they just sit there and meditate. And during that meditation, they visit dreams of identical memories of their current lives, and sometimes even their past lives, depending on their age. Because, yes, complicated elf lore. I'll explain it in the elf's own video. So that's the basic elf. But then, elf is regarded as one of the most versatile races in the game because it's got so many sub-races. Let's start off with the basic three that come in the handbook, and those would be the high elf, the wood elf, and the dark elf, or drow. High elf is intelligent warriors who are, they think they're holier than thou, and that's about it. Most elves feel that they're higher than other beings because of their longevity and just lifespan. They really see time in a different way than we do, because by the time that one of us dies, they're not even an adult yet, which is kind of crazy. And what are you doing? Cat. Apparently the cat just really wanted to be in my video. So, high elves are intelligent warriors who, just like all other elves, feel that they're higher up in the totem pole of life than most other creatures. And that's about it. They're really good if you want to play a wizard who gets a couple weapons, or if you want to play a fighter who gets a free wizard cantrip, which can be very useful and versatile. So overall, they're a really good race. Bit of lore, this doesn't affect mechanics at all, but they are split into two factions, the Sun Elves and the Moon Elves. Nothing really important there besides the fact that Sun Elves have bronze or golden skin, while Moon Elves often have blue or light near white skin. Wood Elves are Wood Elves. They live in the forest, they run around with animals, and they're faster. That's Wood Elves. Then we've got Drow, the Duergar of Elf, or Duergar the Drow of Dwarf. They're the edgy cousins that live in the Underdark, just like the Duergar. And similar to the Duergar, they get improved magical abilities. Improved magical abilities, good dark vision, sunlight sensitivity. There you go. That's Drow. Then we got Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, the expansion book to the main core rulebooks of D&D 5e that introduce 3 new subraces of elf, taking the total from 3 to 6. These 3 are the Eldraine, the Sea Elf, and the Shadarkai, or Shadarki, depending on how you pronounce it. So, the Eldraine come from the Feywild. And I have to real quickly explain the Feywild, the Shadowfell, and the Material Plane. The Material Plane is where most adventures are going to take place. Pretty much, conceptually, most people see the order of the D&D world as the planar wheel. A giant wheel that just fits all these different planes together that are all interconnected to form one world. The material plane sits at the center of everything. See, my fist is the material plane. Around the material plane are the elemental planes, and then beyond that there's the planes where the gods live. And when you die, you go to one of those planes that the gods live on, usually depending on which god you worshipped. So, right on the material plane, before you get to the elemental planes, you have above it, usually seen as above, but there really is no relative location in beyond space. You got the material plane, and above it you got the Feywild, and below it you got the Shadowfell. The Feywild is the material plane, but bright, happy, and wants to kill you. And the Shadowfell is the material plane, but evil, dark, and wants to kill you. To explain it, they're all copies of the same world. The material plane is a conglomeration of both worlds along with elements from all the other worlds. And then the Shadowfell and the Feywild are copies of that world, just the Shadowfell is dark and spooky, and the Feywild is vibrant and bright. Now, Eldraine are a race of elves that live in the Feywild and are bright and yay, happiness, and also they want to kill you too sometimes. Because the Feywild, while it appears friendly, is very hostile. So, the main gimmick of the Eldraine is the ability to teleport and get a special buff at the same time. Really cool concept in my opinion. I personally like the Eldraine. I've never played one. The only time I've ever played an elf, I played a Wood Elf Druid. But the Eldraine are cool because they can switch between forms. They have a total of 4 different forms, one for each season, and depending on their mood, they'll change them, or also depending on which buffs you want to get. So yeah, one for each season aligning with different moods and abilities. Yeah, Eldraine are all around pretty cool. Sea Elf, pretty self-explanatory. You're an elf with the ability to breathe air and water. You can, using hand motions and basic guttural noises underwater, because it's hard to make noise underwater, you can communicate basic ideas to fish and sea animals that are friendly to you. And you also learn how to use a trident and a spear. And I believe a net. And then we got the Shadar Kai. The Shadar Kai take the drow, say, hey, what if we were edgy without the sunlight sensitivity? And that's exactly what they do. The Shadar Kai are the Eldraine that live on the Shadowfell. They don't do form shifts, though. They live on the Shadowfell, though, with their queen, a demigod elf lady known as the Raven Queen, who periodically tells her people, hey, what if you were to go to the material plane and get me a thing, and bring that thing back to me? Now, and I'm not asking, you're doing it. And that's what they do. And then when their queen isn't telling them to do something, they just sit in the Shadowfell. Most of them honestly hate their lives because they know that when they die, they're going to just get reincarnated as another Shadar Kai. Kind of a sad existence. And that's Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, but then we got the Pallid Elf. Now, the Pallid Elf is from Explorer's Guide to Wildermount. In other words, Matt Mercer's book. Matt Mercer is the DM for the popular Critical Role campaign series. I know they're on their second campaign right now. I have hardly watched any of their stuff. I'd like to watch it, but their videos are long as heck. So yeah. The lore of his world sounds really interesting though, and while I haven't read into the Pallid Elf much, I can at least tell you a bit about their statistics. They get the wisdom increases of the Wood Elf, yet they get some of the magic powers of both the High Elf and the Drow. So yeah, magic of Drow and High Elf with the increases of a Wood Elf combined together, and you don't have the Drow sunlight sensitivity. All around a good subrace. I definitely recommend it. So yeah, that's elves. All the official elf subraces. Yeah, elf is a mouthful. I mean, but then after elf, what have we got? Halflings. Halflings, they're humans, but short. And that's it. They were called hobbits, but then the people who owned D&D back in 2nd edition got sued by the Tolkien estate because they named their characters hobbits and their giant tree people Ents. So they had to change the names to Treants and Halflings. And now they're not getting sued anymore. So yeah, Halflings have a total of 4 subraces. Before I get into those, I have to give you a little bit of background on Halflings. They're dexterous, little tricksters who are very lucky. They have the ability to re-roll nat 1s, which is very useful, especially if you're playing a rogue. That's why they're so popular, even though they have a lower speed. So Halflings are lucky little tricksters who run around and just do what they want. They love family life, similar to dwarves, and their goddess created them as a combination of all the good parts of a lot of different races. I'll explain that in a Halfling video, but that's the basic rundown of their lore. So, they are separated into 4 different categories. Stout Halflings, Lightfoot Halflings, I know there's like a ghost halfling. I can't remember its name, but it's a spooky boy. And then we got the other halfling from Explorer's Guide to Wildermount. Okay. So I'm back after forgetting my notes. And, okay, let's resume with the halflings. So, halflings have 4 different subraces. The Stout, the Lightfoot, the Ghostwise, and the Loudesten? Correct me in the comment section if I'm saying that incorrectly. So, the Stout halflings are a bunch of buff poison-resistant halflings, and they kind of chuckle at the concept of a barbarian or maybe even a fighter halfling. I like that concept. I may use that. Then, after that, we have the Lightfoot. You're stealthy and charismatic. Then, we got the Ghostwise, introduced in Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, which honestly, people give Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide a bunch of hate, but I personally feel that Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide brought some cool things to the table. So, Ghostwise makes you wise, first of all, and you can speak telepathically to people. Both really good abilities. I don't know why a lot of people hate the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. I get it. It didn't add any new races, it just added new types. But it added some cool sub-races and some interesting lore and history to the Sword Coast. And I know there's more regions than just the Sword Coast in the Forgotten Realms, but I still think it's good. That tangent out of the way. Then we got the Loudesten. I'm probably saying that incorrectly. Tell me if I am. And they are again from Wildermount, similar to the Pallet Elf. And they're druid halflings. There you go. That's the halfling. A bunch of kind, short people who are tricky little magic boys. And then we got humans. You know, us average Joes. You know what a human is. You are one. Right? So humans are average at everything. The basic human just gets a +1 to every single skill. No dark vision, no flight, no horns, no claws, no nothing. They just get a +1 to everything. That simple. If you want to be interesting, then you can choose the variant. With permission of your DM, of course, because it isn't a in-stone thing. It's an option that your DM can choose to allow if they really want to. Pretty much, instead of just getting a solid +1 to everything, you get a +1 to 2 things of your choice, along with a skill proficiency of your choice and a feat of your choice. If you don't know what a feat is, it's short for feature, and they're really broken because it can do things like give you extra attacks while using a spear or staff. It can also do things like, if you take the tough feat, you're going to get extra HP each level, which is really good. You can become immune to poison damage and really good at making poisons. You can be a chef. You can have guns. You can have a firearm in Dungeons and Dragons. So yeah, a feat at first level is really powerful, and I definitely recommend if you're going to play a human, consider using variant rather than normal. So those are the common races. Let's get right on into the uncommon races. In my opinion, the interesting ones. So, now we're on to the uncommon races. The races that are less heard of, but still there. Most people are going to know what you are if you play one of these. Some people are still going to think you're a freak. Because you're playing D&D, be realistic, you are. So, yeah. Let's start off. Dragonborns. Dragonborns are a race of... Would they be sapient? No. I don't know. Would they be described as... Okay, they walk on 2 legs, they got a humanoid form, and they're dragon people. It's a common misconception that they are the spawn of a human who mated with a dragon that was polymorphed into a humanoid form. That's a massive misconception. Dragonborn are from an alternate reality where they're a specifically bred group of dragons to just be small, not have wings, tails, and... they're just a slave race to these dragons on an alternate universe, and during an event known as the Spell Plague, they got sent over here. It's complicated, I'll go over it more in a Dragonborn video, but that's the short of it. So, Dragonborn. Personally, I love the concept. They're really cool, and sadly, they are often misunderstood. What you're thinking of when you think of a human that mated with a dragon, that's called a half-dragon. Different than a dragonborn. So, what's a dragonborn get? They're charismatic, they're strong, and they get a breath weapon. You also get to choose what type of dragonborn you are, one for every color, and depending on your color, you get a resistance to some sort of damage along with your breath weapon. And your breath weapon means you get to shoot an element. Sadly, it's a little underpowered, so I would talk to your DM before, playing it. So that way you can see if there's a way that you could power it up. So, that's the Dragonborn. What are their subraces? Well, every single one of those colors is not its own subrace. Thank God, because there's a lot of them. Long story short, they've got only 2 subraces, actually. There's the Ravenite and the Drakenblood, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Again, they're a critical role thing. They're from Explorer's Guide to Wildermount. I may not even be pronouncing Wildermount correctly. Wildermort? Wildermount? You tell me in the comments section, because I don't know anything about Critical Role besides Matt Mercer, funny voice actors. That's all I really know. So, pretty much, Drakenbloods, that's what they're called. Drakenbloods are good at intimidating and persuading. Very rarely, though, because they only get once a rest. Then, the Ravenites, that's what they're called. The Ravenites are, I don't know, they can smack things when they get smacked, and that's cool, I guess. But they trade those out for their draconic ancestry that gives them the resistance along with, I think do they still have the breath weapon? I don't think they still have the breath weapon. Just kind of a downside, but they get dark vision. And normal Dragonborns don't get dark vision, which is a plus. So, if that's what you're into, play the Dragonborn subraces. With Dragonborns out of the way, we're on to Gnomes. Now, Gnomes are short little people with pointy ears, and they like making things, and that's a gnome. So, how do I explain them? Humans are to elves as halflings are to gnomes. Humans are basic, medium-sized people, and elves are pointy-eared, magic medium-sized people. Halflings are small, normal people, mostly normal. Gnomes are small, magic people with pointy ears. Gnomes are much more like the stereotypical Christmas elf rather than the elf, which is nothing like the stereotypical Christmas elf, besides the pointy ears. So what do? Well, first of all, they're big brain, they're intelligent, and yeah. They're dexterous, kinda, depending on who you choose. The Rock Gnome is one of the subraces, and the Rock Gnome is an inventor. They're also known as Tinkerer Gnomes, and they make things. Next up is the Forest Gnome. That's what it's called. Man, I just had a massive blank. I'm not using a script, people. This is all coming straight from my head. So if I get something wrong, don't tear me to shreds in the comments. I'm just doing this for fun. So, the Rock Gnome... No, I already talked about the Rock Gnome. Okay. The Forest Gnome. The Forest Gnome is a bunch of druid illusionary mage gnomes, and they live in the forest. And then you got the Dark Gnome, or the Snurf Neblin. I am also probably pronouncing that incorrectly. They are, again, the edgy cousin race. Just like dwarves and just like elves, there's an edgy cousin race. They have extended dark vision and sunlight sensitivity, and yeah, they live in the Underdark, and they're not inherently evil like the Duergar and the Drow. They actually are genuinely okay people, though they can be grouchy, and they really like gems, particularly gems. They like gems. There you go, gnomes. They're a bunch of pointy-eared, funny people, except for the Deep Gnome. We're just gonna go with Deep Gnome because I can't even properly pronounce that. So, after the gnomes, we got the half-elves. What do you get when a human and an elf do things that if I explained them could get this channel demonetized. Well, you get the half-elf. The half-elf is, I don't know, a half-elf, half-human, half-elf. They get the best of both worlds. They get a +2 into charisma, or +1 to 2 other stats of their choice. They're all around a really nice race to use. And then they don't technically have sub-races, but they have one ability that you can trade out for different abilities depending on who your parents were and what type of elf they were. Thing is, they don't have them for Eldraine, Shadowkai, or Pallet Elves. They only have them for High, Wood, Dark, and Sea Elves. So if you want to homebrew your own thing, talk to your DM. There's definitely some good things there. If you want to play a Drow with the Drow magic feature and not have to worry about the sunlight sensitivity, play a half-elf with the Drow features, because then you get most of the Drow features without sunlight sensitivity, which is really good. So that's half-elf. They're half-human, half-elf. They're often ambassadors to talk to the other side, but they don't really have a homeland, so they're kind of lonely and sad. Then we got the half-orc. It's an orc that mated with a human, sometimes mated with an elf, but more often a human, sometimes a halfling, but it's more often a human. They're strongy, they're hard to kill, they don't have any sub-races. Not talking about the dragon marks of Eberron. I'll explain those in their own video. Those deserve their own video. But orcs, discounting the dragon marks of Eberron, don't have their own sub-race. So, yeah, they're just one type of half-orc. They're good at crushing things, and they're hard to kill, and they can literally just say, no, if they drop to 0 HP and come back to life. Once, though. Per long rest, I believe. So yeah, we're on our last race, guys, and why not save the most customizable race in all of D&D for last? We've got the Tiefling. The Tiefling is a quite literal hellspawn. It's what you get when you have a group of mortals who make a pact with the 9 hells and curse their entire bloodline. So, there you go. Tieflings are humans with pink or purple, sometimes blue or green skin, and they don't have pupils, and they got horns, and depending on which type you choose, you can have claws that don't really do anything, they're just there. You can have sharp canines, you can have cloven hooves. There's a bunch of different things. You can trade out, you get an innate casting ability, so you get some powerful, well, not powerful, but useful magic you can immediately cast. But you can trade that out if you want, let's say, wings. You can trade that out for demon wings, devil wings, not demon wings. Demons and devils are two different things in D&D. To explain it quickly, demons are chaos monsters, while devils are law monsters. Devils operate the hells, demons operate the abyss. They both hate each other, they both would rather be taking over the world, but since the other one's trying to take over the world, they're interlocked in a never-ending conflict, and due to that, they aren't taking over the world. So they're both the bad guy and the good guy and the loser at the same time. So, yeah. While you can have your Tiefling be a demon spawn or a Yugoloth spawn, Yugoloth is another type of fiend, it's meant to be a hell spawn. Because almost every single one of the sub-races, there's a total of 10 of them, but 9 of the sub-races are all based around the 9 levels hell. One sub-race for every single level. Actually, there might be 10. I can't remember. Shoot, I'm pretty sure. Oh my goodness, and that means, wow, there's a lot of sub-races. So, I know there's at least 9, one for each level of hell, and they get different spells and different ability increases. And then there's the Feral Tiefling, which is a dexterous, smart Tiefling rather than a charismatic, smart Tiefling, which it's a cool change-up if you want it. And a lot of the customizability, including the wings, the special attributes, and the Feral Tiefling, all came from Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. So I get it, it didn't have a ton of stuff, but I don't get why people hate on it besides that. So, with that out of the way, that's Tiefling, that's half-orc, that's half-elf, that's gnome, that's dragonborn, that's halfling, that's human, that's elf, that's dwarf, that's all of the races in the basic books. And I know this video was meant to be short, But when you're covering 9 different races all in one video and trying to shorten them, you still end up with a lot of stuff. So, if you enjoyed this video, please do consider liking and subscribing. If you didn't enjoy the video, dislike if you want. I prefer that you don't. But yeah. If I mispronounce something, go to the comments section. Let me know. I want to make this channel good. And the only way I can make this good is by people that don't like what I'm doing telling me how to improve. So, if you have a certain thing that you saw during this video that was all, that's not correct, or he said something wrong, or anything like that, let me know in the comments. Don't just dislike the video and then leave. It's kind of rude. I try my best, and I am just doing this for fun. So yeah, if you have, like, something that can be useful to me to help me make this channel what you want to see on YouTube, let me know in the comments. Share with a couple friends if you want to go above and beyond. Like and subscribe if you really want. And yeah, that's my video. So, thank you for watching. This has been Max from Maximus Miniature, and I'll see you guys in the next video.